You're listening to the Fezcast, the Saracens fans podcast, bringing you the independent and unhinged views of the voices in our heads, as well as those of our special guests. To get in touch with us, find the Fezcast on social media and listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube and more. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy this week's show.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Well, hello everybody and welcome to our next edition of the Fezcast, and joining me for this episode is John and Sam. John, how are we, gentlemen? We all good?
Very good, very happy.
Yeah, excellent.
Sam, first of all, welcome back. Hope everything's going well, because I know you've had a bit of a time of it with family and everything, but obviously seeing Saracens put up 71 for whatever it was, it's a good tonic, isn't it?
Indeed. If I'm looking like I've got a few bags under my eyes, we've just got a brand new little puppies.
Oh, no.
I wasn't allowed to call him Owen or Faz or Maro or anything like that, unfortunately. But yeah, apart from that, very, very happy. What a way to end this block of fixtures, I suppose.
Before we get into that, a couple of bits of other news that we need to cover from the Fezcast. And first of all, a bit of sad news. We'll start with some sad news. And we heard last week, Maro Itoje had put it out there on his socials that unfortunately Maro's mum had passed away. And, you know, we don't know the ins and outs and the details of it. But from everybody here at the Fezcast, we obviously would pass on our best wishes and deepest sympathy to Maro and his family. Because, I mean, it's a terrible thing to happen. I mean, she can't have been particularly old, John. I mean, you know, her son's only just 30, so huge loss. Can't be easy, can it?
Very sad news to hear. And as you say, you know, all of our condolences to Maro and the family, and to happen at such a time around Christmas as well. So it makes you realise, you know, what's important.
It makes everything in perspective when we've been discussing players and how players have been performing and everything like that. The fact that Maro has had this going on in his life, mark of the man, isn't it? That, you know, he can still perform whilst he's going through all this sort of stuff.
Yeah. Terrible news, and thoughts go out to Maro and all the whole family. But as an avid follower of most players on social media, you do see Maro is very much a family person, isn't he? The family, I mean, it's at the heart of a lot of what we do, but for Maro, he was very open with it. So not saying that it's any worse because of that, but obviously just terrible news all round. And yeah, as you say, when things are going on in the background, you don't always know, do you? And yeah, very much a mark of a man to be able to put that to one side and still continue, still work hard and still get on with the job at hand. I'd imagine he very much sees his Saracens family as well as very important, and it's something that he wants to, you know, put all his effort into as well.
Well, indeed, and it brings us on to another player who I'm sure Maro will have spent some time with, who went through something similar a couple of seasons ago, and that's Jamie George, who lost his mum, who was a huge, not only supporter of Jamie, but supporter of Saracens as well. So I'm sure that Jamie will be someone that Maro will be sitting down with and discussing things with John. But what we do need to say about Jamie, in a week when we thought, oh, well, you know, here you go, here's the big the big statement from the club, and then it's sort of like kind of, well, not say overshadowed, but Jamie George has said he's going to retire at the end of the 2026-2027 season. Jamie George, let's be honest about it, the greatest hooker England have had, probably the greatest hook Saracens have had, and, you know, we've had a couple of good ones, haven't we, over the years, in particular shout Brits, obviously, but potentially the greatest hooker the game has seen, full stop.
Let's not forget, Jamie's been at the club since he was 4 months old or whatever it was. I mean, it's something to be proud of when you play your whole career at the same club and you develop into such a, I rate him as the kind of number one. I can't think of anybody else who touches in really and continues as he's done. But just to play at one club and then develop into such an amazing player. A player who's always been really close to the fans as well. And as you touched on, his mum was always around the matches, wasn't she? We used to see her all the time. In a week where we get one lump of news, for that to come along. In fact, when I first heard it, I said, oh, Jamie George is retiring at the end of the season. And then I was trying to count, where are our basket full of hookers that we've got?
Well, we'll discuss that a bit further on, because obviously there is some big news that we need to discuss, which we're going to do in the last part of the show tonight, because we want to talk about the game on the weekend. But, you know, Jamie's making his retirement at the end of 2027. He's still in the England squad, so presumably he could be potentially going out on a really big high, playing for England in the World Cup final, because presumably that's the deal, that he's going to get through to 2027 with, like a lot of people are. Number one, does he go to the World Cup? If he plays and continues to play as well as he did, you'd be a fool not to take him, Sam. But secondly, as well, there might be a couple of other players who might be making the same sort of decision. I mean, perhaps a certain Mr. Farrell might be looking at 2027 as being the right time to hang up their boots.
First and foremost, just to add on what everyone said about Jamie, can I just add in what a phenomenal human being he is as well? He was very kind. My dad suffered with cancer a couple of years ago, and he sent a very nice long video message to him when he was at Pennyhill Park in his England get-up. He was England captain at the time, and obviously having gone through or was going through stuff with his mum at the time, very heartfelt. And, personally, I have a lot of thanks for him for that. As we've said before, a real measure of the man, that he'll take the time out to do something like that. And I think spot on. He's a fantastic player, potentially the best there's ever been in that position. And you just add to the fact that he's an awesome human on top of that as well. And a very good coffee maker, apparently, too.
Very good.
Elliot Daly has particularly said how brilliant he is at making coffee, I've heard. But yeah, I think that's got to be in his plans, surely. Too much of a coincidence otherwise. I think he can make it. I can. As much as it pains me to say, Cam Dickey has been playing all right at the moment. I've never really been the biggest of his fans, but yeah, Jamie has got absolutely that opportunity. And what way to end a career and to be part of something like that. To say whether Owen is going to be there or thereabouts doing that, if I'm honest with you, it pains me to say it, I do believe we've seen the last of Owen Farrell in an England shirt. I think the only other time you might see him is if he's coaching the nation one day. I'm not too sure he's in the plans, especially with Steve Borthwick there, to come back in. And to be fair, there are a lot of decent tens about at the moment, so I'm not really sure he'll be there. But certainly, JB, what a way to end a one-man club career, which would be brilliant, wouldn't it?
It would do. Now, I'm going to mention Owen Farrell a bit later on when we talk about the Red Bulls game, so we'll park that one over the other side there. But I will say, first of our 3-word reviews from Josh Miller, McCall, George, legends. Well, we'll talk about Mark McCall in part 3, but Jamie George, yeah, absolute legend. So we'll say, looking forward to hearing I Am a Moulder, I Live in a Hole a few more times before the end of 2027, as I'm sure he will do. Well done, Jamie. Got the announcement in. Have a farewell tour of quite extensive level, and good luck to you. So we have a break there then, and then we'll come back and we'll discuss a clipping a Red Bull's wings.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Hello, this is Akina Gondwe of Saracens Women, and you're listening to the Fezcast, and we are both proudly sponsored by the Saracens Supporters Association. For a £10 annual subscription to the SSA, you'll get the chance to buy tickets for away matches, receive a regular newsletter, and an exclusive SSA badge. They also arrange pre-match gatherings and player-coach events. As well as sponsoring both me and the Fezcast, they also sponsor Louis Johnson from the men's team and the Saracens Foundation Track Club. Not bad for £10. You can join up at membermojo.co.uk/SSA. Enjoy the rest of this edition of the Fezcast, and I look forward to seeing you at StoneX. Come on, you Sarries.
This is the Fezcast.
Well, welcome back to the Fezcast, and time to discuss the big win on the weekend. It was a big win. However, it's quite interesting, is it? Because there's been some mixed reactions. If we look at some of the 3-word reviews, Jimbo said lots to like. Disillusioned Pensioner said committed, enthusiastic, deadly. Crusty Colonel said well overdue performance. SSA up, down, up. Yeah, okay. Black and red, cheeky cob. Good this week. At Rugby Saracens, better, but Newcastle. And Ben Hogsamar said flat track bullies. Whilst Mark the Medieval Rats pointed out discipline wins matches. And yeah, it's a little bit of a curious egg of 3-word reviews there, but I suppose first things first, let's look at team selection, John. And I mean, Matt's not joining us tonight, but he was quite vocal on our WhatsApp group. having a bit of a moan about the fact that we seem to go back and show loyalty to old players. And, where was the youth? And his comment, I suppose, justifiably was, what did we learn from that? A bunch of players that we know would run a game against, as Rugby Saracens alluded to, Newcastle, who aren't very good. They gave him a thumping. So where were the youth? I mean, we had Nathan McCall come in and Harvey Beaton come in because of injuries during warm-up. Were you happy with the team selection, John, or would you have rather seen a few more kids coming through and playing in this game?
Generally, I was happy with the selection. I understand where he was coming from. If we don't start blooding some of the youngsters and giving them a start, just bringing them on. Charlie was a prime example. Playing it from the start on Saturday, the game stepped up a pace. And I think his kind of speed, he dragged everybody with them. Yeah, one hand, you could have brought youngsters in. Yes, we did have youngsters on the bench, or some youngsters on the bench. But, I mean, it's a difficult balance, isn't it? I mean, we needed to win that game. We had to win that game. Otherwise, we're going to be really dragging 6th and 7th, if not lower, at the end of the season. So on one hand, I can understand where he's coming from. Second hand, I think some of the calls that we've all been making about swapping out scrum half, I think he did that. I think that made a difference. Noah Clory, again, he's one of our youngsters. Whether we call him a youngster or not, he's a regular now. He's making all the difference. And I don't know. It's a difficult call, isn't it? We could all have different views on who do we pick, who don't we pick. We want to pick this, we want to pick that. Yeah, 6 or 1.5 dozen the other. I was comfortable with the side, but I can understand when people say, let's give somebody else. But on the other hand, we needed those points, and we needed to get some points over the line, because I think at the end of the season, looking how close it is in that kind of top 4 or 5, that points for us could make a difference.
That was the important thing, Sam. I think the youngsters could have got out there and got a win against Red Bulls. But I think playing players with the experience, and let's be honest about it, the experienced players really did make a huge difference. We went down the doors, but the old heads guaranteed us plus 50 points, didn't they, Sam?
It's a shame Matt's not on it, really, because he could have given the counter argument. But I'm with you guys. I think the selection was spot on. I think it was a great decision bringing Charlie in. He didn't have the best of starts. His first kick wasn't quite right, but his head was screwed on and he carried on. And he did really, really well off the back of that, particularly the tackle, which I love. That might have been one of my favourite moments of the game, actually. It was a decent blend. He chucked a couple in. But, there is that argument. But you say, look, you've got the Premier Cup coming up. They're going to get a few weeks. The youngsters are playing week in, week out. And also, let's not forget, this time last week, we were seriously licking our wounds after that game up at Glasgow. And I think the team that's ultimately going to be the difference of whether we end up in the playoffs or not needed to play in this game to get their competence up and get some rhythm going again. So I think the selection was right. Do you know what I actually quite liked? I quite liked seeing Fergus Burke come off the bench and play at 15 as well. He made a brilliant little cameo appearance there. So we're moving players around his different positions as well.
It was a slow start, shall we say. We went down 7-0 early doors, or was it 5-0? I can't remember whether they converted or not. We should have been 14-0 down very soon after. However, before we discuss that, we say it's a slow start. I think it was actually too quick a start, because I think the team went in there with the emphasis of, we are going to fly at this at 95 miles an hour. And because of that, we had players hanging off of breakdowns because they were expecting quick ball from Charlie, which eventually did happen. And we weren't quite getting the players. And both those try-scoring opportunities, the one that they did get, the one they didn't get, came after turnovers because we were looking to just motor them off the pitch. The team nearly lost 2 tries, lost 1 try because they were doing what we wanted them to do, which was to come flying out of the blocks a million miles an hour.
Those first 10 minutes, and suddenly I thought we were going to be 14 points down, and what are we doing here? We learned nothing. But you're right, Jez, they were doing what we wanted. They came out of the blocks 100 miles an hour. But then sense prevailed, hopefully, and then they started to play properly together. I mean, Ironi Mawi, he had a really, really good game. Andy Christie, I'm not going to attempt to pronounce Andy Womi, but I'm going to call him Andy Christie. But, he had a really good game in kind of once we got carrying the ball.
The spark was that try-saving tackle from Charlie Bracken, which, Tom Christie's probably woken up 17 times since then and had an absolute nightmare about it. And if he wasn't prosecuted in the bar afterwards and made to do some sort of penance on the coach back to Newcastle, then, the spirit of rugby's gone from the professional game. But it was the spark. And as Gareth Baxter said, Charlie's key tackle, wasn't it, Sam? And yeah, you've just said you enjoyed it. I mean, it's not only a highlight of this game, it's a highlight of the season. It was just, you're an open side flanker and you've just been bundled into the dead ball area before you grounded the ball by the scrum half. I mean, that's up there with the most embarrassing moments that could ever happen on a rugby field, isn't it?
I was actually sitting just in front of Kieran and the family, and I can assure everyone that he was a very proud father at that particular moment. I don't know if it was the big smile on his face or some of the words that came out of his mouth that that made me think that, but he was certainly very happy, as was his mum. So, yeah, cracking. And do you know what? I was in not the Fez room. What's the other one? Not the Tulip, the other one. Anyway, I was in one of the hospitalities, and Jack was in there talking before the game, and he was talking about the competitive nature and everything. But he really did big up Charlie and said, what a great older brother he is, and what a fantastic player he is. Let's not forget, it wasn't actually that long ago that Charlie was playing academy rugby. And now that I'd probably say at least 50% of Saracens fans probably believe he is our current best number 9. So it's been a real ascent from Charlie. I hope his younger brothers can do the same thing. But I'm a big fan of Charlie's. I think he's a great player. I think he's still got loads to learn, but that's actually the exciting thing, that he's currently brilliant and he can only get better. I mean, surely there's England in his future.
Before we move on to the rest of the team and a few people that I want to mention, as Mark the Medieval Rat said, discipline wins matches. And our discipline in this game was immense. Newcastle's was awful, but two things there. One, the referee, the young lad, Joe James, his name? He was excellent, really, really good. Encouraged his convictions. He went to the TMO when he had to. The TMO spoke to him when he had to, but it didn't affect the game in any way. He didn't allow that to get on top of the game, and he made some really, really good decisions. Newcastle were indisciplined, but a lot of that came because they were just under huge amounts of pressure from Saracens. And even in that period when Newcastle got their try and looked like might have got another couple of tries, we were blitzing them and causing them all sorts of trouble that they had no option but to infringe. And, 2 yellow cards in the game, and could have potentially been more. Tells its own story, doesn't it?
Great improvement in our discipline from the previous couple of games. Much, much tighter. But Newcastle, give them a couple of years and they'll be a good side. I have no doubt about that once they get the structure that they need. But they couldn't cope with that sort of pressure that a disciplined Saracen side put on them. We forced the penalties out of them. And, yeah, I mean, it's down to us playing well that forced them into the game that they played.
Someone that we've never mentioned before, and great because it's another player that I'm going to struggle to say their surname, but my free word, here comes TC, and TC to Iguala, he was just a bulldozer, wasn't it?
I've always said, I don't know if this is a back thing, because the forwards get to do a lot more tackling, but as a back, I'd probably say that I would enjoy doing the hit of the game more than scoring a try. Up in the stands, when there was that one that went in, and I think the whole crowd went, oh, that's what you want. And you know what you need? I know we've talked a lot about safety in rugby way over the years, Jez, but it was good. When you can hear it reverberating, that's what we go and watch these games for, isn't it? Let's be honest.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I'm with you, Sam, and as a back row myself, as I might have mentioned on a couple of occasions, I had seasons where I scored try after try after try, but that one time you made the big hit is, that's the one you remember. And TC, I think I put on the WhatsApp group, immediate cult hero. He was superb, wasn't he?
I'm in block 6 about Roger or whatever, and you could hear it and you can see it. But the good thing was, it was a well-timed, solid tackle. Nobody was injured. Yeah, it took a few minutes I can't remember who he tackled now, but it took a few minutes for him to come back round again. But it was a good tackle. Yeah. Perfect. No complaints. Not high, not low, but really good.
I thought Elliot Daly had a pretty good game. He's getting back to his normal standards, but we're not going to concentrate on him too much because I think the two superstars of the game, one got man of the match quite rightly because he scored another 15 tries or however many it was in Noah Kalori. But before we talk about Noah, Rotimi Shegan, he's my player of the season this season so far. He's just, every time he gets that field, he causes problems. He's great in defence. You know, everybody's talking about how Christian Wade ran him down. No, he didn't.
No, he didn't.
No, he didn't.
No, he didn't.
For a team he'd put a kick in, he'd had to pause his run and then go again. And he held it up against him. And Christian Wade is quick. There's no two ways about it. But, I mean, Rotimi showed him a pair of heels there, Sam, didn't he?
Everyone knows he's quick and he can cut a line. He's been able to do that since he was 7. But what's made Rotti a lot better a player, I think, in the last couple of seasons has been, number one, defensively, he's much, much, much better positioned. He used to get caught out a lot and he doesn't anymore, which is great to see. But his ability to just do those little flicks, the little kickovers, I mean, even as a 10, I'd be happy with them. You have to kick a ball in a particular way when it's that shaped for it to bob up like that. And he does it more often than not. They do sit up a lot and he does it in the games and he kicks along the floor as well. So he's got a range of different skills at his disposal. So, yeah, for me, I agree. I think he has been player of the season, albeit I will put the precursor on that other players probably haven't performed as well as they should do. But don't take anything away from the fact that he's been standout this year. And it's actually a bit of a shame that he is, you know, pushing on the upper edge of 20, because otherwise, you know, you probably would be talking England as well for him, wouldn't you?
I'm really happy because not only that, but touch wood, or for Mike or wherever I've got on my desk, he hasn't had too much of an injury issue this year, John, because in previous seasons, he's played 3 matches and had 9 matches out. Whether he's got conditioning better as his body's matured, he's sort of like, you know, been able to develop the strengths that he needs, but he's having a good season of it, isn't he?
Talk about him having a dodgy hamstring. So whatever they've changed this season, it's enabled him to play more games. And it's not, I mean, we talk about, as you said, Sam, we talk about his speed, but his strength as well. I mean, when he gets it and he's taking 2 or 3 players and he's pulling them another 3 or 4 yards and he's looking to be more involved in the game. I mean, he was swapping wings on Saturday with Noah Kalura and going into the back of the scrum. He's my player, and I'm sure a lot of other people, player of the season so far. And maybe that's because he's got a run of games and he's been able to remain fit.
Yeah, that confidence, momentum and everything is really important. However, he was, on the scorecard at least, outshone by Noah Kaluri, who, Rotimi's your player of the year. Well, young player of the year has already been decided, hasn't it? Noah's great. I mean, he plays with a swagger that's bordering on arrogance, which I don't mind. I mean, I do think potentially, and it probably doesn't help him that he's playing for Saracens as well, he could well potentially be the player that people begin to hate, a bit like Henry Pollock at Northampton, because he is so good when he's in your face and everything. I mean, Roger King's pre-word review, Ashton to Sue, which I'm assuming is because of the splash that he's put in, the Ash splash. But I mean, I suppose if you're Chris Ashton, 2 things there, isn't it? 1, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, number 1. And number 2, we're talking about Christian Wade overtaking Chris Ashton's Premiership try-scoring record. At the current rate Noah's going, he'll pass that by the time he's 23, won't he, Sam?
Do you know what? I'm going to say something. I think Noah Kaluri might end up being one of the greatest of all time. I think he's better than we think he is. And the reason for that is, of all the stuff that no one notices that I watch him do, he doesn't miss a tackle. He tracks back. He pulls people into touch. His defensive positioning is great. I said about Rotti earlier on, it took him 5 or 6 seasons to get to the level that Kaluri's performing at in defence. He tracks along really well. He swings well with the back 3. I think he's going to put on more weight as he gets a bit older as well, which will make him harder to tackle. I mean, you can't get hold of him, so you don't need to tackle him now, but I think he's better than everyone thinks he is. I think he's genuinely the real deal. I'm always a bit concerned when, you know, we saw him up in Newcastle. He scored that great try. You don't want to get ahead of yourself. I'm well ahead of myself now. That boy is special. He needs to be in an England shirt as soon as possible. Get him in there. 6 stations is probably too early, but he needs to go in the summer. He needs to be part of that squad in the autumn. And then he needs to be one of the first names on the team sheet after that, because this boy is as special as we've had in this country for a long, long time.
He should be around the England setup to learn what's going on. I mean, the thing you've got to bear in mind is that we've got quite a lot of rounds in the game that have got the shirts on right, and you wouldn't be dropping them necessarily. Jonah Lumu was the same age when he burst onto the scene for New Zealand, and we all remember how excited we were when we saw that. And I get similar vibes with Noah Kaluri.
He's fast, he's jinky. It was his positioning, it was the tackling, and it was his timing as well. I'm not surprised he's not in the Six Nations squad this year, and that's cool. Let him develop, but absolutely get him involved in the summer next year. And if he's managed well, he's a great player for years to come. Hopefully at Saracens.
And I saw an article with him where he clearly has an idea of his worth. He has ambitions, and he has lofty ambitions. But quite rightly, you should do, shouldn't you? Every kid who pulls on a rugby shirt must be dreaming of playing for their country. Noah is. He also wants to be the best player there has been. And why shouldn't you have that ambition? You know, you've just scored 742 tries in 8 games. I mean, you can have those sort of ambitions. But what is quite interesting when we talk about him developing and everything, I saw an article where he talked about that, but that he had also had Owen Farrell in his ear. And it's something we'll talk about when we talk about Brendan Venter, about perhaps his attitude was a little bit immature and he got a bit of a chewing out from Owen in a kind of fatherly way, because that's what Owen is now to a lot of youngsters, and Jamie George will be, and Maro Itoje will be, and other older players around the club. Owen clearly sees that he is this world beater potential, but it's all well and good having the potential. You've got to fulfill the potential. And I think he's in the right place to get the right sort of help, advice, guidance to get that. And it's not all about saying you are a wonderful player. It's about giving them a bollocking when they need it and just keeping them in the right direction.
If he does go on to do what we all hope and dream that he ends up doing, how good a decision was it to send him to Ampthill? That could come back as being one of the greatest decisions in rugby history. You know, they send him down there to play on a park pitch. I played on that pitch, and it's not the nicest. And I mean, he did do well down there, didn't he? Let's be honest. And then he had a little run in the Prem Cup. He scored that fantastic try up in Newcastle, and then he didn't automatically go just straight into the team constantly. And I think that was a great decision by the management team at Saracens. For me, Owen Farrell could end up being a better coach than his dad one day. I think he's got everything that's needed to be a coach at the very, 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 very top. And he's proved it there potentially by being the guy to go along and say, look, son, I know you're flying well now, but take it from someone who knows they'll turn on you quick. So keep your feet on the ground, unless you're getting up for a high ball, and crack on. Time will only tell how good advice that had been, but so far so good. The guy's just genius. I love him.
The rumours went around or whatever that Owen Farrell fell out with Harry Arundel for very similar reasons. That, you know, Arundel was beginning to believe a bit of the publicity, and Owen identified that he perhaps needed to be brought down a peg or two. And some players will react to that in the right way, which is Noah going, okay, fair enough, no problem at all. And we've all been there, haven't we? When we started off in our own lives in work and everything, you had the older bloke in the stores or the older bloke in the office or whatever, turn around. And when you were an apprentice back in the late 80s, early 90s, when you were sent out for a can of tartan paint or a sky or a blue flavour spark plug, these are all the sort of things that are character building that just bring you down to earth, keep you grounded, aren't they, John?
Tartan paint. I didn't fall for that one, but I felt for something very similar. It was interesting to hear, we always hear Owen when he's on the field, especially when he's captain, but providing advice to Noah. You could hear him shouting, get back, Noah, get back, on more than one occasion. You can see him, as soon as he hears his voice, he cracked back. He's listening, and he's not saying, what are you telling me what to do? I'll do what I want. No, he listened and he was there. So I think that relationship will help him build.
Now you mentioned that from Owen Farrell, we'll move on to the old guard, and Owen will be the first person to speak about. Krusty Colonel, his second three-word review was fast, quite nippy, and there weren't moments where fast showed him. Well, as they always say, the first 5 yards, Sam, are in the brain, aren't they? And I'm sure that when you were coming towards the end of your career, you still found a gap. Wouldn't necessarily go through it as quickly as you used to, but you'd see it before anybody else did, didn't you?
I have a lot of empathy for Mr. Farrell because he and I have never been blessed with natural speed. I do believe that there are certain players that are not necessarily quick, but like you say, it's in the head. And that man knows the game of rugby as well as anyone ever has. You know, he studies it like an art form, like a science almost, actually. And yeah, you see it. The amount of times, it should be called the Farrell pass. The amount of times that you see Farrell get in the ball and it's like everyone else just stands still. And he has so much time to decide who he's going to pass the ball to. And sometimes he'll realise that the man's coming up too quick. He'll take a slight jink to the inside to pull away from him. And that guy goes straight through and then he passes the ball behind his back. The amount of times that happens and you don't see other fly halves do it. Do you know why? Because they're not capable of doing it. Yeah. That's the reason why they don't do it. Because that is a try pass. The try occurs off the back of that pass pretty much every time. And Farrell has that ability to do it. And I think that's almost, when he has good games now, they're almost as good as they've ever been, because he doesn't rely on fitness and speed and agility and all those kind of things to make him the player he is. I mean, some of the kicks to touch on Saturday were just awesome. Down our side on the east stand, there was a penalty. He didn't even look. He just picked up the ball from the ground and just knocked it. It almost hit the corner flag. And it was about 30 odd yards out. I thought if Noah Kalori hadn't scored as many tries, Farrell was going to win man of the match on Saturday. I think he was as good as he's been this season, albeit against an average opposite number, but he was as good as I've seen him for a while.
You did mention earlier on that you don't think that Faz, like Jamie, could be going for a World Cup and everything, but there was a comment made on one of the Facebook pages or something I saw where they talked about who do you pick as your 10 for England and everything like that. I know when Farrell's name was mentioned and people were poo-pooing it and everything, but if you went into the next game and Finn Smith and George Ford got injuries, Owen Farrell's the first person I ring, because I'm not having Marcus Smith playing 10 because he'll cost us the Six Nations. George Ford, Finn Smith deserve their opportunity and they are 10s in possession. But if you suddenly had a crisis, Harvey Skinner's doing good stuff down at Exeter. Max Ajomo could play there, but he's behind Finn Russell at Bath. Owen Farrell would be the man in the same way as the British Lions. You need someone to come in with that experience. You pick Owen Farrell because three things will happen. One, you'll get 100% from Owen Farrell. And two, he knows the game inside out.
You'll know he's never going to let you down. He's not fast anymore, but watching him on Saturday, he's constantly scanning the field. It's them kicks, it's the passes, it's those delayed passes. A bit like Elliot Daly, really. And they're at that time in their career when they're not going to beat the fastest young lads in the world. They really aren't. But they seem to have got more time to play the game. I would be upset if he played for England again. I don't think he will, because I don't think maybe he doesn't want it. Because, you know, he's done all of that and he's now looking to the next stage of his career. But he'll never let you down. He's not going to be the fireworks, but he'll never, ever let you down.
Jamie George had a great game. We mentioned this earlier on. He said, I know when I'm retiring, so I could put everything into it. And you will see more great performances from Jamie George over the season. The other player I thought tops off by his burst through for Noah's 17th try or whatever it was, Nick Tompkins, as Ted Zier said, Tompkins looked better. Well, I think Tompkins looked good as he has done all season.
He looks a lot better without that silly moustache, doesn't he? So that's the main thing. But after that, his playing is as good. The thing is with Tompkins, he's one of those, I think a lot of teams would want him in their team for the very reason is he very rarely dips below at least a sort of a 6.5. And you need those kind of consistent players. And then he'll have moments in a game that are exceptional. You know, he's notoriously difficult to tackle. He's a little bit like Seguin insofar as once you get hold of him, he still seems to wriggle around and make more space for himself and sometimes get passes away. Occasionally, he has a 9 or a 10 game. But I thought he was good. I mean, look, let's be honest. Everyone was pretty good on Saturday. You don't score 73 points without having a good team. But I thought he looked like his old self again a little bit. He's dipped out a few games this season. When we were at Northampton, he let a few things go and he hasn't necessarily been at his best. But yeah, he looked back on form on Saturday. And actually, he's the kind of player that you probably would have wanted him to then have another game next week, another game after that to build that momentum. So it's a bit of a shame that it's come at the end of this plot. Yeah, good to see him back to his best and long may it continue.
Well, of course, he's not in the Welsh squad, so there's every chance he could play in the Premier Cup if they wanted him to. But there we go.
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say we're pretty happy certainly with the result. We're pretty happy with the performance shown. We'll take into account who it was against, but you can only beat what's in front of you. So, all told, given that we've got quite a big subject to go on with next, we'll have a break there and then we'll come back and ask Doctor, tell us the truth.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Well, welcome back to the last part of this week's Fezcast. And of course, you know, I mean, we thought Jamie George's retirement announcement was going to be the big news. And then on Friday, we heard the news after Paul has said, enough is enough. We've been discussing it on previous weeks. We looked at him and wondered whether he was in the right place. And it appears he wasn't in the right place. But I think the important thing about Mark, John, is that I don't think he ever wanted to let Saracens down. And we don't think he has ever let Saracens down. But I think in his own mind, mainly because of the standards he sets himself and the club, he felt probably that he wasn't achieving that and he didn't know how to get back. And, you know, The emergency phone call went out to Brendan Venter, and we'll discuss how much of a long-term, short-term thing that is. But before we do anything else, as Hankey said on their 3-word review, and they actually sent a long message about it and about how the team were playing with fun on the weekend and everything like that, and then almost like a lot of pressure had been lifted off of them. And I think a lot of that was to do with Marks making the decision and what he did. But all respect to Smalley, he's a club legend. He'll always be a club legend. I think he's done the right thing, not only for him, but also for the club, for his family, for everybody associated with it. But also, Dominic Sylvester and the club have done the right thing by him and shown class. And I think a lot of that did come from Brendan Venter as well, in saying that you're part of the family, Mark. You can't get away that easily, but let's give you something with less pressure. Become a member of the board, a director on the board, with everything that goes along with that. Be involved with a little bit of advice here and there to Brendan and whatever. But brilliant, Mark. An amazing career at Saracens. And, from us on the Fezcast, we send you and your family all of our love and support and say thank you very much for your service.
Being a Sand Wasps fan from childhood, I only came back to watching rugby and Saracens about 14 years ago. So I suppose I consider myself a child of Smalley, really, but he's given more to that club. He's given more to rugby. Let's be honest. Not just to Saracens. Look at the number of the players and the coaches that started with us, Sanders and such like up at Sale, who said some lovely words the other day about him. I know he had a break a little while back and whatever, and we didn't know what that was about, but that's a kind of personal family issue. But he's always given everything to Saracens. He's decided it's the right time for him to step away. But I am so glad what Dominic's done is to take him on the board and make him a kind of technical advisor, or whatever you want to call that. So he's still part of the club, because the club of Saracens today is built around him. It's built around his ethos and his training methods, and look how much success we've had over the years. So, one hand, time to step away and fully understand his decision. Well, don't understand his decision, but you know what I mean. But important that he remains part of the club. I can't comment on the doctor because I wasn't really following Saracens when he was there. But I've read some good things and reports over the last few days that kind of reassures my nervousness of bringing back somebody who hasn't coached for a while.
Well, we'll come back to that in a minute, but I want to say, Sam, that number one, Mark McCall is the greatest director of rugby union is known. And in sport in general, you should be putting him on the same pedestal as Alex Ferguson, which means that he should be getting a knighthood. I don't think he will do because of politics around what happened a few years ago. Mm. He has built a dynasty, the same as Alex Ferguson did at Manchester United, the same as Bill Shankly and Bob Paisley did at Liverpool, the same as Brian Clough did at Nottingham Forest. These great managers, he's exactly the same in rugby union. If nothing else, Sylvester, the last step you need to make is to name what stands the Mark McCall stand at StoneX, surely.
Annoyingly took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say he's rugby's answer to Alex Ferguson, because I think that the similarities are actually so great insofar as not only has he come in and he's changed the way that we play the game, but he's brought he has, especially in, let's say, the first 2/3 of his tenure, his not reliance, but he did it on purpose. He was purposefully pushing on these academy players to come through. He brought them in early. He got them involved. There was a very much a kind of the Saracens way in the first team, how they played trickled down to the academy sides, and had a massive involvement in all of that. And I've said it, this is a bit of a theme of today, but he's just a great human being as well. I've never heard anyone say anything negative about him. I've had the opportunity to chat to him a couple of times. He's always been really forthcoming, open, honest, and a real delight to talk to. I know he's going to be greatly missed in the changing room, but you talk about, all the stuff that went on a few years ago. I hate seeing it all, because we are one of the greatest sports clubs that's ever existed in terms of how we look after our players, our staff. We are a great family club, and this just epitomizes it. It's Smalley. It's mutually probably the best time for him to move on. But he is Saracens, so he needs to be around the place. He needs to be there. And I think it's quite nice as well that he's passing the baton back to Brendan, who he took it off in the first place. So there's that really nice continuity there as well. But no, great man, legend of the club, and he will be forever. And I agree. when Stonex don't want to call it Stonex anymore, we'll just call it the McCall Stadium. That'd be it.
It's something I got from Smalley when I interviewed him earlier on in the season, is the lack of ego, the total humility of the bloke. The decision he has made, I don't think is putting himself first. It's put Saracens first. And he said, I cannot do what Saracens need me to do anymore, and therefore I'm the bigger man. I am not bigger than the club, as much as the club is what he has created. He knew it was time. He knew that he couldn't inspire the way that he wanted to inspire anymore. That's huge credit to Smalley that he has said, fair enough, I'm going to give up a very well-paid job because I am not giving it what I feel the job deserves and the club deserves. That's great and fantastic. And as I say, I'll reiterate again, Smalley, you're an absolute legend. We love you to bits and we think you're fantastic, and long may you enjoy what you do in the future, and you get that quality that you deserve and the respect that we all give you. Of course, that does, though, mean, as you said, it's the return of the Doctor, which was probably a little bit of a left field part of it. I mean, we all expected perhaps that Smalley at some point was going to say, do you know what, enough's enough. But I don't think anybody expected Brendan Venter to be coming back. I mean, you are on the Cape, in your doctor's surgery, which you built up. You finish work in the evening, you can go down and have a bray on the beach or whatever. I mean, who wants to come to North London and leave that behind? He did a great interview in the Telegraph where he talked about Mark McCall and all about the reasons why Mark did, and it was beautiful to hear what he was saying. But also, the only thing that would have taken me away from there is Saracens. And then when you've got somebody who loves the club that much, who's had enough time away from it, and bearing in mind, he's always been around. He's been a technical advisor. We see him at games and everything like that. He comes back here, there and everywhere. But he loves Saracens. He will give the reset needed going through this season, helping Mark through to the end of the season, then starting off next season. I mean, I don't think it's a long-term fix, is it? We'll discuss with Sam in a minute the discussions he had with former players who we won't mention. We don't mention our sources. I think Brendan has appreciated that. Probably they wanted Mark to go on until 2027, but Mark couldn't do it. So Brendan said, right, my love of the club means that I am going to step in. And that's another part of the ethos, isn't it?
He's worked with the Doctor before Saracens, as we all know. So they've got that ethos, that mindset, that drive, that way of getting the best out of people. So, yeah, I think having him back now, whether having read the few articles that have been around and what he said, it could turn out to be a very, very smart move. I don't think it would be long-term. Yeah, his lifestyle, why would he want to come back to North London in November? I think this is a sound, a short-term measure. They've almost provided Mark McCall with the support. He'll take over under the team. Mark's still going to be there. He's got all the knowledge of all the players and what's going on. The Doctor will make some tinkerings and some changes, bring a bit more, whatever they need to bring in, and prepare the chair for whoever comes along after that, whoever that may be.
Potentially what we're looking at is post-2027 Rugby World Cup. We talked about the likes of JB George getting to there and retiring from playing. Potentially what you might see is a certain Wiganer currently residing somewhere outside Dublin who might well be tapped up, ready to go. They'd have done what he'd have done with his international side, perhaps looking for a new challenge. You spoke to a couple of people who, I think your comment was, nothing's been signed, but it was like a nod and a wink's as good as a smile, isn't it?
Yeah, and look, I don't want to get my own hopes up with any of the listeners' hopes up, but yeah, the person I spoke to, I've known well enough that he could just sort of give me that wink. Go back to the Ferguson thing, right? When Ferguson announced he was going to move away from United, it was like a morning. I feel like it's almost created a buzz of excitement with everything. And I think that's testament to the club and how they've handled this. They've held Mark up as the legend that he is. They've shown a clear line of sight as to where we're heading. Don't forget, we're also in really good hands in terms of the potential coaches that we have still on the pitch. We spoke about Farrell. We've spoken about Jamie George. These players are earmarked for cracking coaching careers as well. And, the next season could actually be a bit of a player coach kind of scenario where those senior players are taking on that role. Maybe they're getting qualifications and all that sort of stuff as well. So for me, this is actually really, really, the whole thing's quite exciting. And of course, the prospect of a certain senior Farrell being back at the StoneX is amazingly exciting. And I think, so I saw somebody posted or put a comment when someone said something about it on Instagram, said, why the hell would he go to Saracens? And my comment was, why the hell wouldn't you? This is the only club that a man like him should be even considering going to. Plus, he gets the opportunity to help his son progress into the next part of his career, as clearly they're going to be a massive success and the two of them can go and coach England together later on in life. It just all makes sense, doesn't it, surely?
Well, it does to me. Now, let's look at, though, Brendan coming in. Last time he was here, we had a night of the long knives, a discussion I had with Chris Chesney and a couple of other players at that time. I don't perceive, John, it's going to be a night of the long knives. We read the Telegraph. I mean, I feel dirty mentioning the Daily.
No, say it again, Joe. Say it again.
Gets beeped out.
I really do, but he was clear in his feeling that they got a good group of players and there's just a little bit of tinkering needed. I'm wondering, however, whether the tinkering may be with the coaching staff and maybe there'll be a bit more apprehension, shall we say, amongst some of the coaches as to whether they fit into the plans going forward, particularly if we're preparing for a new head coach to come in post 2027 World Cup.
We've changed our coaches around last year and we've made some changes this year. All of us have noticed that we play differently and scratching our head at times. We've got the players there. We've got some cracking young players coming along. I don't see why you would bring in a load of star players when we know that we've got the likes of Noah Clory. We know we've got the likes of others coming through.
I think the interesting thing is from that article is that I think, yes, he appreciates the players, the talent's there, but I do think there's going to be a couple of incoming. I put down bollockins on the agenda, but I'm not sure whether it's bollockins, but whether there's going to be a full and frank discussion about attitude. And I think the quote that came out of it was that if anybody comes into work and says they're not up for it today, he said, well, that's bullshit. And he's 100% right. If you cannot be up to put on a Saracens training top, playing shirt, whatever it may be, then you have to have a real hard look at yourself. And I think, to be fair, most of the players there buy into that. And everybody has a couple of off days. But if there are any players there whose heads are turned by their own worth, shall we say, I don't think it would be a surprise if you see some of those players go at the end of the season. Sam.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. Look, I've always, this shows my age a little bit, and I know that you guys mentioned it earlier on, but I always say that even Wayne Rooney doesn't want to play for England some days, so that does show me age. No matter what you do, some days you aren't going to feel it, but I think it's the attitude that goes around it. And certainly I think Saracens have always been a very mindset-driven team, haven't we? Particularly in the Smalley era, our brains got us through games a lot of the time. That's quite a good line, isn't it? I do think we have lost that a little bit. Go back a few years and we could be losing by 20 points. You still just believe you're going to win the game, sitting on the sidelines watching it. Now you don't get that anymore. And certainly last week against Glasgow, that didn't feel like it was ever going to happen with a lot of the same players. So yeah, I think there are some. I mean, look, I don't like to single players out too often, but I said that most players had a fantastic game Saturday. Alex Zazowski was off pace from start to finish, which was a real worry. I know he's had a bit of an injury, but you look at players like that and you just think, are they just got to that point in their career where they're ready for a move? And I know it's been muted about going to Sale. So yeah, I think there are players that are certainly going to be on their way out. But I think also Brendan's going to have a big influence on some of the players that potentially might come in. And if they don't come in and interview well, better than he's interviewed in the past, if you know your history, no matter how good they are, they're not going to get a look in. And I think that's an important thing as well, that anyone that wants to come and play for Saracens under Brendan Bennet's got to have the right mentality and the right mental strength to do so.
We're looking at perhaps getting another hooker, obviously, with Jamie George. We'll look at number 8, Alfie Barbary on our radar. I do think that going up until 2027, next season, we're going to trust on those senior players, which is going to upset Matt, but I'll chuck him a custard cream or a bourbon or something and say that's just it. 2027 is going to be the start of a new rebuild. But look, we're running out of time. I'll say thank you to you guys for being part of this again. I think we can look forward with a bit of enthusiasm that perhaps has been lacking in recent weeks. We look forward to the Prem Cup and what goes on there. Hopefully next week I've got news on an interview that I might be able to be doing as well. But I've got to speak to Ollie on Tuesday morning, although that's yesterday. I'd have spoken to Ollie yesterday. So we'll try and get something sorted out for next week. But yeah, other than that, Sam, John, and everybody listening, I thank you for your time and hope you enjoyed our discussion. And welcome back, Brendan, although you've never really been away. And as I say, we'll get a chance to give Jamie George a proper send-off at the end of 2027. But for Mark McCall, again, we say thank you for your service, Smalley. You're an absolute legend and a gentleman of the game. And we wish you all the best as well. And we'll say thank you, everybody. Bye from the Fezcast.
This is the Fezcast.